This is a movie that even a pervert can't help but feel inferior after watching it. The film caused a great shock in the Japanese film and television industry right after its release. The director was so twisted that he dug up such a script that ruined his values. However, in order to weaken the biggest pervert in the film, the director even hired the top Japanese beauty, Takao, to play the female lead. However, unexpectedly, after combining beauty and perversion, Takao became a psychological shadow for Japanese men. At the beginning of the story, it was very explosive. Mesa took off the doll's clothes, then picked up a bottle and looked at the doll with a flowing nose. There was no feeling, but a strange sensation came over her. He is a strange child who, due to an extreme lack of security, whenever he sees a hole, he wants to fill it with something, otherwise his heart will be empty and uncomfortable. When she found a hole on the manhole cover, Misha quickly grabbed various small creatures and threw them in. However, the well was too deep, and Misha couldn't fill it enough, which made him scratch his heart and liver. And at that moment, the little girl who was playing together came. He was looking for a hat, and Mesa handed it over. However, the little girl took a look and found that her hat pocket was filled with snails and earthworms. The little girl's shoelace was hooked by a branch by the pond, and she desperately slapped the water surface but couldn't get up. And as long as Mesa broke the branch, the little girl could be saved, but she remained motionless as she looked at her struggling companion. Her long empty heart seemed to overflow the ocean, feeling unprecedentedly fulfilled. Mesa realized that creating pain and then appreciating it was the source of her happiness. But this secret is too difficult to reveal. Misha can only hide it secretly in her heart, but as she grows up, her heart dries up again. Love, friendship, learning, etc. cannot arouse his interest. Only when he sees someone wearing a hat can he feel the long-lost longing. Coincidentally, the little girl's hat was blown away by the wind and fell into the sewer. The passerby lifted the manhole cover and asked the girl's brother to pick up the hat. Misha immediately stepped forward to help, but just as the boy got the hat, Misha suddenly pressed down on the manhole cover with force. The boy's convulsions and blood brought Misha unprecedented satisfaction, and it turned out that killing someone by hand was the most hidden refuge in his heart. This discovery made Mesa both excited and fearful. He had no idea how to deal with himself, and his personality became increasingly solitary, afraid to have a friend. Until Mesa went to culinary school, he found a girl among his classmates who had a fierce and fast knife technique. His wrist was still wrapped in gauze, and blood was oozing from the gauze. Misha was inexplicably attracted to it. As expected, the two of them just looked up at each other and their eyes became blurred. Mesa followed the photon home, and as soon as she entered, the photon untied the gauze. Photon immediately brought 2 boxes filled with knives of all sizes, and then he picked up one and stabbed it hard on his arm. Watching the blood emerge, Photon and Mesa suddenly felt relieved both physically and mentally. Two people who resonate with the same frequency became good friends like this. Their greatest happiness is when you stab me, I stab you again, and then feel the exhilarating joy in their own and each other's pain. And the reason why photons are like this is because they were threatened and suffered serious psychological trauma when they were young, so they hated and detested their own bodies, which transferred the pain in their hearts to their bodies. But as time goes by, the hurt in childhood is like a beast living in the heart, gnawing on his heart more and more. He needs an extreme physical pain to suppress the pain of being gnawed on inside. Mesa understood this longing and picked up a large knife, piercing open the artery of the photon. The photon slowly bled and died in a peaceful and joyful state. And the encounter with photons also deeply influenced Misha, making him deeply disgusted with men. There was a man who coveted Misha. When he found out that he lived alone, he insisted on taking him home. However, Misha deliberately walked up high into a place where he could easily fall to death. He pretended to twist his foot and asked the young man to carry him home. But as soon as the young man squatted down, Misha's eyes turned cold. Although American businessmen despised men, they had to rely on men to survive. Due to his introverted personality, many of his jobs cannot last long. In the end, he can only work in the current popular industry and turn from a cook to a meat and fish on the chopping board. Misha's heart is even more oppressive. To his shame, he also met a male classmate from a cooking school. Upon hearing this, the man couldn't help but feel excited. He quickly called another male classmate and invited him to come to the party together. Then Mesa was taken to the kitchen where she learned cooking together during school. The perversion of her old classmate made Mesa's heart full of shame, but for the sake of money, he still lay down. Mesa felt like she had turned into raw meat, being slaughtered. When she thought of slaughtering, she immediately picked up a frying pan. The long-awaited murder brought Misha a unique pleasure. After handling the scene, he threw the frying pan into the river. Although killing brought a brief pleasure, he felt guilty afterwards. In order to cover up this evil, he became even more corrupt and received more and more guests. Soon, Mesa became pregnant, but he didn't know who the child belonged to. Just when Mesa was at a loss, he saw a man who was always sitting alone by the river. Mesa went over to chat him up. After taking a deep look at Misha, Watanabe took out his wallet and gave him a bill, and even treated him to a bowl of noodles. The sudden hot noodle soup is a little warm to Misha's heart. When no guests can be received, there is no need to speak. Just stand in front of Watanabe and he will give Misha money. More times, Misha feels embarrassed. He asked Watanabe again and made an appointment for a free roadside ride. With a smile, he took Misha home. But this time, he still didn't do anything, just let Mesa be by his side. Mesa couldn't help but wonder why Dubien remained indifferent to his beauty. At this moment, a bold idea appeared in his mind, and Dubien did not conceal it. He generously admitted his incompetence, but he was not congenital, but a psychological disorder. Cool his mother cool. When Watanabe was in college, he once lifted the manhole cover to help a little boy pick up a hat. However, just as the little boy found the hat, the manhole cover suddenly fell and Watanabe couldn't lift it, causing the boy to be crushed to death. Because of this incident, Watanabe has been self-blaming and guilty, feeling that he has carried the burden of life and caused lifelong pain to the boy's family. He is not worthy of love and marriage, but he cannot easily die. So Watanabe prepared a bottle of hydrogen chloride, and whenever the pain was unbearable, he would eat a little to fully feel the pain of dying and apologize for it. Misha just listened quietly. He didn't dare to tell Watanabe that if he hadn't suddenly pressed the manhole cover back then, how could the little boy have died? Thinking of the scene of blood flowing horizontally at that time, Misha couldn't help but feel nauseous. He didn't know how many months he was pregnant, and because he didn't have the money to chop the fetus, he could only let the child grow in his stomach. Watching Misha's predicament, Watanabe suddenly proposed. Perhaps taking in a fallen woman and raising a child that doesn't belong to him can help him accumulate merits, but Misha firmly claimed that he is not worthy of being a mother and would nominate him for abortion when he has money. Wrong. Yes, he didn't even have one. Dubien's words made Mesa think of a different kind of life. After encountering so many men, he only did not reject Dubien, which was also destined by fate. So Misha and Dubien got married and gave birth to a boy. Dubien wholeheartedly loved this bloodless child, and this love deeply infected Misha's cuteness. Dubien's gentleness gradually healed Misha's pathological Santaro, and Misha's calmness and softness also made Watanabe's heart peaceful, and he regained his strength. Life suddenly feels beautiful and unreal, but a few years later a man came to us and we all have to say goodbye. Misha's husband is handsome, and her son is also 8 years old. She didn't want to talk to this man, but Murakami just said a word to Misha, and she obediently obeyed. Murakami hugged her and went to the hotel. However, that night Murakami passed away mysteriously, and the police quickly came to his door. They detected hydrogen chloride in Murakami's body, and Wei Sha looked innocent, firmly denying her relationship with Murakami. However, careful Watanabe still found that the hydrogen chloride at home had been frozen. He told Mesa to be honest, they are husband and wife, and even the worst thing should be born together. Mesa was deeply moved, but he still insisted that Murakami's death had nothing to do with him. But the mouth can lie, but the heart cannot. What Mesa presents in front of Watanabe is only his side, while his other side is the killer maniac. 8 years ago, Misha was a street girl who was soliciting customers on the roadside when she met an old classmate. In order to humiliate Mesa, an old classmate called Murakami again and invited him to play together. Before Komura could arrive, Misa knocked her old classmate to death in the kitchen and hurriedly fled. For so many years, this case has been unresolved. When Murakami saw Misha that day, he told him that his old classmate had called him before he died, saying he was with Misha. If the police knew about this, they would definitely find out about Misa. Misa was afraid that the situation would be exposed, so she killed Murakami. When killing people in the past, Misha would feel unprecedented satisfaction, but now he is extremely anxious, afraid that the police will find out what is involved in Watanabe and the child. So he wrote down his journey of killing people from childhood to adulthood in his diary, and then took the opportunity to fall asleep by the river, intending to commit suicide. The sudden appearance of Liang Jie disrupted Misha's suicide plan. In order to save his son, he had to swim back, but when Watanabe saw the diary, he completely collapsed. He only wanted to help the little boy with his hat during his youth, but the manhole cover fell and smashed the boy to death. For so many years, Watanabe has been condemned by his conscience, and even to make amends, he married Misa, who stood on the street and raised his biological father, Liang Jie, who was unknown. But Beisha wrote in his diary that he deliberately pressed down the manhole cover, and he also intentionally smashed the boy to death. Dubien's half-life misfortune was nothing but the abnormal and strange achievement of Misha. Such Misha was completely unfamiliar to Dubien and he could not accept it no matter what. Du Bien's hatred. Misha fully understands that only when he dies in Du Bien's hands can he be liberated. So Du Bien took a rope and a stone and took Misha to a bridge. After eating green tea for him, Du Bien tied Misha's hands and added stones under the rope. Although Misha's face was filled with tears, he still consciously climbed up the fence, ready to apologize with death. But just as Misha stepped on one foot, Dolby picked her up and she still couldn't bear to see Watanabe. She cried and untied the rope, and Watanabe gave all the money on her body to Misha, telling her not to appear in front of her and the child again. Mesa was heartbroken, but she still had the agreed plastic surgery and lived a miserable life. 15 years have passed in the blink of an eye. While working in a restaurant, Misha met a girl named Xianhui. Her wrist was covered in knife marks, and Misha knew that she was a girl with a painful story. After years of sedimentation, she no longer had the same obsession with the knife marks on others as she had seen photons before. Instead, she had sympathy and compassion. But coincidentally, Xianhui is the girlfriend of her son Liangjie, but due to family debts, Xianhui is always tied up to make small movies. After learning about this matter, I feel so painful that I don't know what to do. But at this moment, he discovered Mesa's diary. Although he hated his mother for being such a person, he understood the desire to kill in his bloodline and woke up after reading the diary. He grabbed the knife and was about to strike the bullied Xianhui, but as soon as he pushed open the door, he saw corpses scattered all over the ground. Misha has already dealt with those people and is ready to surrender. This aroused Liang Jie's suspicion. He suddenly pulled up Misha's arm, and there was indeed a crescent-shaped birthmark on it. He was his mother. Surprisingly, Liang Jie blamed Misha. This sentence scared Misha Watanabe. When he was asked to leave, he didn't want to affect Liang Jian. But what is the situation now? Seeing Misha's incredulous gaze, Liang Jian suddenly pounced and grabbed Misha's neck. But now, when Colossi Misa was about to suffocate, she forgave and let go. Misa knew she couldn't do it because she was raised by Watanabe, kind and friendly, and wouldn't be a killer like her. Misa wants Watanabe and Chihiro to be together. Good people need equally good people to match, and people like her should not interfere in anyone's life. But just as Misha was about to surrender, Liang Jie suddenly spoke up. Watanabe is already in the late stage of cancer. For so many years, he has been mentioning Misa again, but now he is whispering his name over and over again. Liang Jie knew that Watanabe still loved Misa. After many years, the two meet again, and everything feels like a world apart. Whose life has no blemishes, whose heart is not a lily heart. Whether it's killing, deceiving, or resentment, they all dissipated in a smile as they looked at each other. In the deepest part of life, they are still the people who used to make each other feel at ease. Alright, that's all for today's story. I'm from Xiaoban. See you next time. To avoid missing out on more exciting movies, please click subscribe.